In Washington, AOC thought she could embarrass Senator John Kennedy live on air. She went after him with sharp words and confidence, but what happened next stunned the entire room. One sentence from Kennedy, and the whole place went silent. "You won't believe what he said." The studio lights burned hot, casting a stark glow over the polished wooden table at the heart of the live broadcast set. The air in the Washington, D.C. studio crackled with anticipation, the kind that only comes when two political titans are about to collide on national television. The crowd, a mix of journalists, politicos, and curious onlookers, buzzed with energy, their murmurs blending into a low hum that filled the room. At one end of the table sat Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, known to the world as AOC, her sharp eyes scanning the room with the confidence of someone who'd mastered the art of commanding attention. At the other end, Senator John Kennedy, the Louisiana Republican with a drawl as thick as bayou mud, leaned back in his chair, his weathered hands folded calmly in front of him. The contrast between them was stark, one a fiery, fast-talking progressive from the Bronx, the other a slow-spoken Southerner whose folksy demeanor belied a razor-sharp mind. The broadcast, hosted by a major cable news network, was billed as a no-holds-barred debate on the state of American politics, tax policy, healthcare, and the ever-divisive culture wars. But everyone in the room, from the host to the audience to the millions watching at home, knew this wasn't just about policy. It was personal. AOC, a rising star in the Democratic Party, had built her brand on bold, unapologetic rhetoric, her social media presence a juggernaut of viral moments and cutting quips. Kennedy, on the other hand, was a veteran of the Senate, a man whose unassuming style masked a knack for delivering lines that could stop a room cold. The stage was set for a clash of styles, generations, and ideologies. The host, a seasoned journalist named Margaret Hale, kicked things off with a question about economic inequality, a topic tailor-made for AOC's wheelhouse. She launched into her response with the precision of a seasoned performer, her words rapid and rhythmic, like a spoken-word poet weaving a narrative. "The system is rigged," she declared, her voice rising with conviction. "The top 1% hoard wealth while working families scrape by. We need a wealth tax, we need Medicare for all, and we need to stop pretending that trickle-down economics is anything but a fairy tale for billionaires." The crowd erupted in applause, with a few enthusiastic whoops from younger audience members. AOC's eyes sparkled, she was in her element, feeding off the energy of the room. Kennedy listened, his head tilted slightly, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He didn't interrupt, didn't fidget, didn't even take notes. He just watched, his eyes steady and unblinking, like a hunter sizing up his quarry. When it was his turn to respond, he leaned forward slightly, his voice slow and deliberate, each word dripping with the cadence of the Deep South. "Now, I don't disagree that folks are struggling," he began, his tone almost conversational. "But let's not kid ourselves, Tashin, the rich ain't gonna fix a broken system if the government's just gonna turn around and spend it on more bureaucracy. You wanna help folks? Cut the red tape, let small businesses breathe, and stop acting like Washington's got all the answers." The crowd murmured, some nodding in agreement, others shifting uncomfortably. AOC didn't miss a beat. She leaned forward, her elbows on the table, her voice sharp and pointed. "Senator, with all due respect, that's the same tired line we've heard for decades. Cut red tape, let businesses breathe, it's code for letting corporations run wild while workers get crushed. You're from Louisiana, right? Tell me, how's that hands-off approach working for the folks in your state who can't afford healthcare?" The jab landed. The audience chuckled, and a few clapped. AOC's smirk was subtle but unmistakable, she knew she'd scored a point. Kennedy's accent, his folksy style, had long been a target for critics who saw it as a relic of a bygone era, a caricature of Southern charm. AOC wasn't just challenging his policy, she was questioning his relevance, his authenticity, his very place in this modern, fast-paced political arena. The room felt electric, the tension palpable. The host, sensing the moment, leaned in. "Senator Kennedy, care to respond?" For a moment, Kennedy said nothing. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled, his eyes fixed on AOC with an intensity that seemed to quiet the room. The crowd waited, the seconds stretching out, heavy with expectation. Some thought he might falter, overwhelmed by AOC's rapid-fire attack. Others wondered if he'd retreat into his usual folksy humor, deflecting with a quip about crawfish or sweet tea. But Kennedy wasn't rattled. He wasn't retreating. He was waiting. Then, slowly, he leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table, his voice low but clear, each word deliberate and measured. "You don't measure intelligence by how loud someone speaks," he said, pausing just long enough for the words to sink in. "You measure it by the truth they carry." The room froze. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the studio. AOC's smirk vanished, her eyes narrowing as she processed the words. The host, Margaret Hale, blinked, her pen hovering over her notes. The audience, caught off guard, sat in stunned silence for a split second before erupting into applause, first a few scattered claps, then a wave of cheers that filled the room. It wasn't just a comeback, it was a surgical strike, a single sentence that cut through the noise and reframed the entire exchange. Kennedy didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply leaned back in his chair, his expression calm, almost serene, as if he'd just stated the most obvious fact in the world. But the impact was undeniable. AOC, usually quick with a retort, sat back, her lips pressed into a thin line. For the first time that evening, she seemed momentarily at a loss for words. The host scrambled to regain control, clearing her throat and pivoting to a new question, but the moment lingered, heavy and unshakable. What made Kennedy's line so powerful wasn't just its brevity or its wit, it was the way it crystallized a deeper truth, one that resonated beyond the studio walls. In an era of soundbites and viral clips, where political discourse often devolved into who could shout the loudest or trend the fastest,